Then the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him." Most everyone is familiar with the preceding passage, this statement leading to the creation of the woman from the side of Adam. It is not good that the man should be alone. The word alone is defined by the New American Standard Dictionary as separation, taken from the root meaning to be separate, isolated. Oxford Languages define separate as forming or viewed as a unit apart or by itself. Isolated is defined as having minimal contact or little in common with others. Now here's the kicker. One can be in the midst of a large gathering, yet be very much alone. How can that be? Because the element of pride is quite adept at making us feel separate from others in our minds and hearts. What do I mean by pride? The inordinate love of the self. So let's bring this down to the idea of a collective, which may consist of hundreds, perhaps thousands of people. Does being part of a collective guarantee that one is not alone? Not at all. In fact, more often than not, it contributes to our isolation. Why? Because when 1,000 selfish people join themselves together to promote a selfish cause, all you have is 1,000 selfish people promoting a unity that is nothing more than an illusion. When the cause is self-absorbed, then the result is self-absorbed. And when we remain self-absorbed, we will be alone, no matter how many are involved. Remember, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Just because it appears strong externally doesn't mean it hasn't fallen inwardly. Jesus proclaimed this very thing with the religious leaders of his time. If you read through the entire 23rd chapter of Matthew, you will find that the problem with the religious leaders was pride. It goes without saying that there are many such collectives today, both secular and religious. I cannot help but think of the following. There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is a way of death. Today, many collectives appear to embrace noble causes, but pride works very subtly and is quite deceptive. When a cause is driven by a love of the self, it leads to isolation and eventually death. No, not physical death, but an absence of life in the heart and mind. I believe this is what is meant by fallen. Think about it. Did Adam and Eve physically die after their disobedience? Not for a long time, but in keeping with what the Father said, dying, they would die. How did Paul put it? Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. Now, here's where things get interesting. Paul said, sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin. Who is this one man? It's Adam, right? Do you mean Adam, the person? Or might there be more to this than what first meets the eye? Tradition has done a good job of confusing us about Adam and Eve, suggesting many foolish things, not the least of which is the idea that they were the parents of the entire human race. So in this way, they passed the sinful nature along. No, not so. Our Creator did not sanction incest to propagate the human species and then later condemn it in His law. Adam and Eve were not the parents of the entire human race, but representatives of it. Just as a policeman typifies the entire police force, so too does Adam and Eve characterize the first generation of humankind. For this reason, Paul could say, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul, while the last Adam was made a quickening spirit, immediately following with, that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterward that which is spiritual. Adam and Eve represent the natural man, while Christ represents the spiritual man. So how did sin and death enter? Through Adam, the natural man. And since this essence abides in all of us, sin and death eventually enter our lives as well. Consider what Paul said to the believers in Corinth. But the natural man does not receive the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, nor can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. Because we cannot receive or know the things of the Spirit of God due to our natural essence, what follows? Well, just like Adam, we eventually become lifted up within ourselves and thus fall into carnality. For this reason, Paul stated, "For as in, or just like Adam, all die." If my understanding is correct, all of us enter into this world as a natural person, very much alive. However, once our pride and independence begin to assert themselves, sin enters and we begin the process of dying. As stated earlier, this is what is meant by fallen. Please consider. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. The immutable principle of sowing and reaping. What can we take from this? Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone, and it is not good that we should be alone. What's the remedy? We must die. What? Die? Are you serious? Might this be why Adam and Eve died? I believe it is. Despite what tradition says, the fall of Adam and Eve was not some event instigated by a rebellious angel God created. After all, it was God who planted the garden and put the two trees in it. But what about the serpent? Most see the serpent as this fallen angel, the devil and Satan. The devil and Satan part is correct, but the fallen angel part is not. So who or what was the serpent? Might it possibly represent a haughty spirit that prompted a mindset of pride? But that is a subject for another series. So let me emphasize, if a grain of wheat does not fall into the ground and die, it remains alone. At this point, I will close, but be sure to join me for the next video, where we will continue our examination of John 12:24 and the concept of death.